Heroes of the City of Man, pages 263 to 268. Fury in the Service of Piety, books 10 through 12. To understand Book 10 fully, we need to recall the concentric structure that we have borrowed from Brooks Otis. Book 10 corresponds to Book 4, since each records a tragic death for which Aeneas is in some way responsible. Dido in Book 4 and Pallas in Book 10. Contrasts are, however, more important than similarities. In Book 4, Aeneas is possessed by a passion directly contrary to pietas, and this madness puts him on a collision course with fate. In Book 10, on the contrary, he acts from pure pietas, particularly his sense of obligation to Evander for the care of Pallas. Importantly, his piety toward Evander leads directly to the achievement of his fate. In both books 4 and 10, moreover, the role of the father is crucial, though in both cases the father figures are absent. Evander is back home, and Anchises is already dead in Book 4. As Hamlet discovered, however, fathers are never completely dead. They keep rising from the dust to haunt their sons and impose burdens upon them. Though Anchises is absent from the scene in Book 4, Aeneas' actions are still evaluated as responses to Anchises. In his dalliance with Dido, Aeneas is impious toward the memory of his father, who has urged him continually to move toward his destiny. By contrast, in Book 10, Aeneas shows that he is loyal to Evander, and this loyalty to Pallas' father is also loyalty to his own father. Finally, Aeneas' response to furor in the two books may be compared. Dido's furious love nearly turns Aeneas from his fate, and now he faces a terrible battle fury of Turnus. In the earlier book, Aeneas was as yet unprepared to journey to Italy to achieve his destiny, but in Book 10, he takes up that destiny responsibility. He proves himself to be Aeneas reborn. Like many books of the Aeneid, Book 10 has a tripartite structure. It opens with the Council of the Gods, the only one in the Aeneid. Its presence here serves to highlight the pivotal character of the book. As in Book 1, Venus and Juno are at odds, and here their conflict erupts into the open. At the beginning of the epic, Venus, like Thetis in the Iliad, asks Jupiter to help her son, and Jupiter assures her that Aeneas' fate will be achieved. Book 10 has a different result. Jupiter is so disgusted with the gods that he leaves everything to fate. The second scene of Book 10 begins with the return of Aeneas, which is the hinge of the book and of the entire second half of the epic. Up to this point, the Latins have been making headway, forcing the Trojans behind their walls. When Aeneas returns with reinforcements, he ensures the Trojan victory, and this reshuffles all the Iliadic roles. Before Aeneas' arrival, the Trojans have been Trojans, barely able to fend off a second Achilles. When Aeneas appears, the Trojans suddenly take the role of Greeks. Aeneas has been called a Paris and was in danger of becoming a Hector, but his return is Achillean. This comparison with Achilles is further developed after the death of Pallas. Virgil's description of Aeneas' appearance is significant in a number of ways. By now, as he stood high upon the stern, he had the Trojans in the camp in view. On his left arm, holding the shield ablaze, he raised it up now. From the walls, the Trojans shouted to heaven. Hope reawakened wrath, and they hurled missiles, clamoring as when the cranes that home on Strymon through the clouds call back and forth as they traverse the heavens, leaving the south behind with cheerful cries. Rutulian prince and captains of Ausonia marveled first at all this till they turned and saw the sterns already nearing shore, the whole sea moving landward with the ships. Aeneas' helmet blazed, flames from the crest gushed upward, the gold boss of his great shield shot out firelight, even as when blood-red, ill-omened through transparent night as a comet glows or Sirius comes up, that burning star that brings drought and disease to all mankind and makes all heaven drear with baleful shining. Just as Aeneas himself was inspired by his glimpse of the future glories of Rome in Book 6, so the Trojans redoubled their efforts at the sight of Aeneas' great shield. Flames from Aeneas' head recall both the burning head of Iulus in Book 2 and the depiction of Augustus at Actium, worked into the very shield that Aeneas carries. Like his descendant, Augustus, Father Aeneas enters a war in order to pacify the fury of discord. The crucial event in the second section of Book 10 is the death of Pallas. Pallas is the Patroclus of Virgil's Iliad, but the differences between the two situations are important to note. Patroclus and Achilles were boyhood friends, so that Achilles' rage and anguish at his death arises from deep personal loss. Aeneas meets Pallas only in Book 4 and has known his father only that long. Aeneas' motive for avenging Pallas' death is not Achaean passion, but Roman pietas. Virgil carefully sets up the battle scene to highlight the piety of Aeneas, especially by way of contrast with Turnus. The scene begins with Pallas and Lausus, the son of Mezentius, making their way toward each other across a battlefield. Both are young men getting their first taste of war, and a fight between them would be an equitable affair. As they near each other, Turnus' sister urges him to intervene, and Turnus seeks out Pallas, a younger opponent. Significantly, Turnus' taunt is not mainly against Pallas, but against Evander. "I wish his father stood here to watch," he says before the fight, and after killing Pallas, he adds, "Arcadians note well and take back to Evander what I say. In that state which his father merited, I send back Pallas, and I grant him full what honor tombs confer, what consolation comes of burial. No small price he'll pay for welcoming Aeneas." It is a mismatch between a powerful and experienced warrior and a young opponent. We have seen this scene before. Troilus, killed by Achilles while unarmed, and Marcellus are both pitiable boys. In this sense, at least, Turnus is a second Achilles. As soon as Aeneas sees Pallas fall, he begins to pursue Turnus. Given Turnus' taunt, Aeneas is defending Evander's honor as much as he is seeking revenge for Pallas. At this point, Juno intervenes to take Turnus away from the battle. But Mezentius stumbles across Aeneas' way, a substitute for Turnus. Aeneas' fight with Mezentius fulfills a prophecy that Evander mentioned in Book 8, and also foreshadows a later battle with Turnus. The details of this battle are also significant. Aeneas hits Mezentius with a spear, and as he falls, Mezentius' son, Lausus, steps in to defend him. Aeneas finds himself in a situation similar to that of Turnus. Turnus intervenes between Lausus and Pallas to fight Pallas. Lausus intervenes between Aeneas and Mezentius to fight Aeneas. In another sense, Aeneas is in precisely the opposite situation to Turnus. Instead of seeking out a lesser opponent, Aeneas is forced to face a young man who has sought him out. Aeneas' response to this situation also contrasts with that of Turnus. Far from mocking the father, Aeneas warns Lausus to step aside. "Why this rush deathward, daring beyond your power?" Lausus will not back away, and in anger, Aeneas drove his sword through the young man's body up to the hilt. Virgil calls Aeneas Anchises' son, for he sees Lausus' loyalty to his father, an image of his own piety. As he says to Lausus, "Filial piety makes you lose your head." When pious Lausus lies dead, Aeneas laments, "Oh, poor young soldier, how will Aeneas reward your splendid fight? How honor you in keeping with your nature? Keep the arms you love to use, for I return you to your forebears, ash and shades. If this concerns you now, unlucky boy, one consolation for sad death is this: you die by the sword thrust of great Aeneas." No Turnus-like arrogance here. Even in the midst of battle, Aeneas retains his humanity. His moral superiority to Turnus has been so strongly asserted here that we have no doubt about the outcome of their eventual duel. Clear-cut as a moral issue might seem at this point, Aeneas' reaction to Pallas' death raises questions. Throughout the epic, we have been tracing the facets of the Furor Pietas opposition. After his journey to the underworld in Book 6, we have seen a new Aeneas, resisting disorder in all its forms, submissive to the fates, loyal to his father and his people. Or so we have said. After Pallas dies, however, we see another Aeneas on the battlefield. When he hears the news, Aeneas took 4 sons of Sulmo, 4 more Ufens reared, took them alive to offer to the shades in sacrifice. From this sacrifice, he moves to the sacrificial arena of the battlefield. He refuses Magus' pleas for mercy and chases down the priest Haemonides until he can offer him in sacrifice. Imagery of fire normally attached to Turnus is used to describe Aeneas' rampage across the field. Virgil compares him to the 100-handed Titan mentioned in Hesiod's Theogony. As men say, the Titan Aegon had 100 arms, 100 hands, and sent out burning breath from 50 mouths and breasts, where he opposed Jove's thunderbolt, changing his 50 shields and drawing 50 swords. Just so Aeneas multiplied savagery over the whole field once his sword point warmed. Aeneas turns monstrous as he ravages his enemies. Aeneas's furor is equally intense in the climactic Book 12. Arrangements have been made for Turnus and Aeneas to end the war with a duel, but this pact is broken, and Turnus ignites his old battle frenzy. At first, Aeneas urges his men to keep the truce, but his patience finally wears thin. He called on Jove and called on altars of the broken peace to witness many times. Then into the melee he raced most terrible to see, with Mars behind him, rousing blind and savage slaughter, all restraints on wrath cast to the winds. His rage comes to a climax in the closing battle with Turnus. Aeneas gains the upper hand, and when Turnus goes down, Aeneas is moved by his call for mercy, until to his glance appeared the accursed sword belt surmounting Turnus's shoulder, shining with its familiar studs, the strap young Pallas wore when Turnus wounded him. All bets are off.